Sunflower man, when are you gonna grow? When you gonna lay down?
All right, welcome back to Good Morning Arizona. We're live in the garden. You're looking at some pretty flowers there, and you know, flowers, they're a little tricky in our Arizona heat, but there are some that do better than others when these temperatures get into triple-digit territory.
And you were looking at some right there. In fact, that was a cosmos. We plant those from seed. We're going to talk later on about some plants you can actually grow from seed during the summertime. Right behind those, of course, are some sunflowers, which remind me of you, of course. But come on over here, April. I want to show you some that do fairly well out here in our garden. Now, remember one thing. You want to have a little bit of what? Afternoon shade, morning sun, ideal situation. Keep these guys moist. They like to dry out in between watering. If you got them in pots, they almost need to be watered almost every day.
Okay.
Now, if you got them in the soil, well, that's a different story. Probably every 3 to 4 days. Deep water is ideal. But here's some pentas right here. These work out real well. You see these a lot of times at the resorts throughout the valley. They hold up very well. They need occasional shearing to continue to bloom, but they like, as does all these flowers, well-drained soil. What does that mean? When you're looking at your soil, folks, you're going to have to really work your soil. You can't just put this in our high clay type soil out here. You're going to have to put it in soil right down here, Bobby. Take a look at it. We're just preparing the soil right here. But it's got to be very rich, a lot of perlite in there, a lot of organic matter, and especially a lot of bone meal. This is very important. If you want blooms like you're looking at right here, that bone meal or that phosphorus is very important out here in the desert Southwest because our soils have a tendency to hold on to it. Don't release it into the flower, and then you'll end up without a lot of flowers. Now, come on over here, Bob. I want to show you one. This is the Angelia, which you can see right here. This is an excellent flower. Upright, gets about 2 to 3 feet tall. We're just starting to plant them out here, and they hold up fairly well. They're a new addition here to the valley, and they do real well with regular water. Right behind there is some salvia, of course, some lavender. Both those do very well. There's some coreopsis.
I've got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Okay, marigolds. I've got some. They're dying, and you didn't even know, but you were right. You said it's because you planted them not from seed. You just transplanted them.
Exactly. In fact, there's certain flowers that
I don't understand why that matters.
Well, let's just talk about that. There's certain flowers that like to be planted from seed versus transplants. That's true with cosmos.
It makes them stronger?
It basically, when it comes from seed, they have a root system that hasn't been disturbed. As soon as you disturb that root system, and we're looking at that cosmos earlier, that's why we plant those guys from seeds. That's why we plant a lot of our sunflowers from seeds. A lot of these flowers, now I'm showing you flowers right here that do well when you transplant them from the transplants themselves. But if you need plants that work from seed, well, coming up next, we're going to show you. It's a lot cheaper, a lot easier to do, and of course, a lot of times those plants are a lot hardier out here in our desert Southwest.
Good to know. We're looking at a marigold, beautiful. One of the flowers that can survive our summer heat if, I just learned this, if you plant it from seed.
That's exactly right.
I transplanted mine and they're dead.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Why. They're a little hardier.
You have a tendency to plant them too deep, disturb those roots, and invariably you end up with a dead
I have
flower.
a tendency, or people in general have a tendency?
In general, but April specifically, occasionally. But we just got to. But you know what? I know you look good in the garden anyways because I prove it by growing a lot of sunflowers. Go ahead.
Okay, I got a question for you. You know that Gina and I have been really into Pinterest lately, and I came across this thing yesterday on Pinterest, and I thought that's interesting. I got to ask the garden guy about this. Does it work? So take a look at this picture, this pin that I found on Pinterest. It says that if you plant this bottle of water, not plant it, but I guess put it into your soil with the holes in it, as you can see there, that the roots will, kind of go water, and your plants will do better because of it. In
theory, it looks great, but here's the challenge you got with those guys, is the fact we're not pushing those salts down through the root zone of the plant material itself. And so you've got to water from the top on down. Without doing that, you're going to have a lot of salt that builds up around those roots, and invariably you're going to end up with a real problem.
So that would work in other areas, places with different soil.
Exactly. But right here, you got to make sure you do what we call deep and frequent watering. Water needs to sit on top of the soil and penetrate down through the root zone of the soil and basically push that salt down below the root zone. Without that, you're going to end up with some real problems, especially during the summertime.
And last time you taled about some flowers that do well in our heat and our specific soils and things you need to add to the soil as well. We're getting into those hotter temperatures.
In fact, we want to talk about a few seeds you want to start thinking about putting in right now. And the hollyhocks are one that are actually a biennial, but right now we plant those from seed. Gaillardia is another one, Rudbeckia, your sensation, Gazania, and of course, my favorite, sunflower. offer.
So when
there
do
you
you
go.
plant these?
You know what? I plant them all right now. I just
Oh, okay.
sprinkle them around, work the soil real well. Make sure you work some bone meal into the soil, which we've talked about in the past. Without that phosphorus in the soil, you're going to end up with some flowers that are not going to like to bloom real often. Hold down on the nitrogen, and of course, until they start germinating, regular moisture.
All right, sounds good.